I need to speak to you about something real, something that has been in motion long before this moment ever arrived. And I need you to hear it not just with your ears, but with the deepest part of yourself, where you already know when something is true. What you have recently walked through, what you have recently accomplished, what you have recently survived. None of it was small, and none of it went unnoticed. There are dimensions to existence that your physical senses were not designed to perceive. And in those dimensions, the moment you took your final step across the threshold of that last hard season, something extraordinary happened. It was not quiet. It was not subtle. There was a recognition, a resonance, a sound that moved through places your eyes will never see and your ears will never fully hear in this life. And yet somehow, if you go still enough right now, if you let yourself stop performing okayness for just a single breath, you will feel the echo of it. Because that kind of recognition does not stay only in the invisible. It bleeds through. It finds you. And it is finding you right now in this moment. I want you to understand something about the road that brought you here, because there is a version of your story that you have been telling yourself that is incomplete, and the incomplete version has been slowly shrinking what you believe is possible for you. You have been framing what you endured as simply hard times you had to get through, seasons you survived, chapters you needed to close so you could finally move forward. And while that is not wrong, it is profoundly insufficient. Because what happened inside of you during those seasons was not merely endurance, it was construction. It was the kind of transformation that does not announce itself while it is happening. You do not feel yourself being built while the weight is on you. You only feel the weight, the pressure, the fatigue that settles into your bones not just physically but existentially, that particular kind of tired that comes from carrying hope for a long time without visible evidence that the hope is landing anywhere. You know exactly what that fatigue feels like, the specific gravity of it. The way it does not just wear on your body, but on your sense of what is real, what is worth believing, what you are allowed to want. And yet through all of that, something in you refused to put the hope down. Something in you kept showing up, kept moving, kept speaking into the dark even when the dark did not immediately respond. That decision, that repeated, costly, daily decision to continue despite every internal and external signal suggesting you should stop, is the reason you are standing where you are right now. And where you are standing is not where you started. The distance between those 2 points is not just time. It is who you have become. There is so much I want to tell you about what has been happening from a vantage point you do not have access to, but let me start here. Every moment you felt invisible, you were being seen. Every prayer that left your mouth when you were too exhausted to make it eloquent, too broken to make it polished, just raw and trembling and barely coherent. Every single one of those reached further than you imagined possible. Not one of them dissolved into nothing. Not one of them fell to the ground without being caught. There is a kind of love that does not require your prayers to be beautiful before it responds to them. That only requires them to be honest. And yours were honest. Some of the most honest conversations ever spoken came from you in those dark, empty hours when no one else was around, and you were not performing faith but actually wrestling with it, actually fighting for it, actually choosing it despite the cost. Those moments were not lost. They were not wasted. They were being woven together the entire time, thread by thread, into something that is now beginning to reveal its shape at the edges of your life. You can feel it, can you not? That subtle shift in the atmosphere around you. Something settling, something opening, something that feels less like you are finally catching a break and more like you are finally arriving somewhere you were always supposed to be. If this word is reaching you in a place where you know the truth lives, I want you to take a moment right now and simply say yes. Not because the ritual of it matters, but because the declaration of it matters. Because something happens in a human being when they move from passive reception to active agreement. When they stop just absorbing a word and start owning it. Say yes to the fact that you are seen. Say yes to the fact that your journey had meaning. Say yes to the fact that what is coming is not accident. Say yes out loud if you are somewhere you can, or say it in the chamber of your own heart if you are not, and let that yes become the posture you carry into everything that follows from this moment forward. Now I need to address something that you might not have named yet, but that you are carrying, and it is heavier than you have admitted to anyone, including yourself. There is a kind of weariness that goes beyond physical exhaustion, beyond the ordinary tired that sleep can repair. This is the tiredness of a spirit that has been faithful in secret for a very long time. The tiredness of giving generously when no return was visible. The tiredness of waiting with dignity when the waiting stretched past every reasonable expectation. The tiredness of maintaining belief when belief felt like the most expensive thing you owned, and you were not sure how much longer you could afford it. That weight is real. I am not going to minimize it or spiritualize it into something neat. What you have been carrying was genuinely heavy, and the fact that you carried it with such quiet endurance does not mean it did not cost you. It cost you enormously. And I want you to know that cost has been seen, acknowledged, and is now being honored in ways that are going to begin manifesting in your life with increasing clarity. The season that required that particular depth of endurance has served its purpose. It is not asking more of you. What is coming next requires a different posture entirely. A posture of receiving rather than straining, of resting into rather than pushing through. And you are going to have to give yourself permission to shift into that. It will feel unfamiliar at first. You have been in survival mode long enough that rest might feel like a trap. Ease might feel suspicious. Good things arriving without a fight might make you reach instinctively for the catch. I need you to hear this clearly. There is no catch. Let the good land. Let it settle. You earn the right to receive it with open hands. I want to talk about something you have been quietly afraid of, and I want to address it directly because it has been operating in the background of your thinking and shaping your expectations in ways you may not have fully recognized. The fear that what you have been through disqualifies you, that the places where you struggled, failed, doubted, or fell short somehow put a ceiling on what you are allowed to receive, that there are people better positioned, more prepared, more worthy of the thing you have been believing for, and that you are not quite in that category despite how hard you have tried. I need you to hear me now with every ounce of authority I can bring to these words. That fear is a lie. It is not a small lie dressed up in humility. It is not a modest underestimation that errs on the side of caution. It is a fundamental untruth, and it has been stealing from you quietly for a long time. Your struggles do not define your ceiling. Your failures are not a permanent record that limits what grace is permitted to do in your life. The doubt you carried in the hard seasons was not a disqualification. It was evidence that you were human, doing something genuinely difficult and choosing faithfulness anyway. That is not a weakness on your application. That is the whole point. Grace does not go to those who need it least. It goes to those who reached for it most honestly, which is exactly what you have been doing. Now let me tell you about what is already in motion, because I do not want you to miss it when it arrives by expecting it to come through doors you already know. What is being released into your life in this season will arrive through channels you did not plan for, through people you would not have thought to ask, through opportunities that emerge from directions you stopped watching because you had been disappointed by them too many times. The unexpectedness is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a signature of how this works. When provision moves faster than logic can track it, when connection happens with a naturalness that feels almost too smooth, when doors open before you have fully decided to approach them, that is not coincidence. Do not talk yourself out of receiving it. Do not construct elaborate explanations for why it cannot be real or why it probably will not last. Let it come. Receive it fully. Trust that what is given with intention will be sustained with the same intention, because it will be. There will be moments in the coming season where you pause in the middle of an ordinary moment and notice that something has shifted in ways you cannot fully articulate. A lightness in your chest where heaviness used to live permanently. A sense of footing beneath you that does not require ideal circumstances to feel stable. A capacity for joy that does not depend on everything being resolved before you are allowed to access it. These are not small things. These are the fruits of what was grown inside you during the fire, and they belong to you now in a way that cannot be taken back, because they were not given to you from outside. They were formed inside you, through everything you carried, through every choice you made to keep going when stopping would have been so much easier. What you now carry within you cannot be revoked by changed circumstances. It is yours permanently, deeply and irreversibly yours. This is the moment I want to invite you to do something tangible, something that takes what lives in your heart and gives it a physical expression, because there is something powerful that happens when internal conviction becomes external action. When you move from believing to demonstrating belief with your hands, your resources, your actual life. I want to invite you to plant a seed right now, a real seed, the kind that costs you something, the kind that represents genuine trust rather than convenient gesture. Sow into what is sacred to you. Give in a direction that carries meaning for you. Let your hands say what your heart already knows, which is that the source of what you need is not your situation, not your salary, not your circumstances, not your connections, not your own striving. It is something deeper and more reliable than all of those things combined. And when you give from that place of knowing, what comes back is not just material return, though that is real, and I am not going to pretend it is not. What comes back is a confirmation, a deepening of the very knowing that caused you to give in the first place. The act of releasing with faith is itself a form of receiving, and the harvest that follows from it is calibrated to the depth of the release. Let me speak now about your sense of identity, because long seasons of difficulty do something to a person's self-understanding that is subtle enough to go unnoticed until someone names it. When hardship persists without resolution for an extended time, the story you tell yourself about yourself begins to quietly contract. The edges of what you believe you deserve, what you believe is possible for you specifically, what you believe you are allowed to hope for, they pull inward. Not dramatically, not all at once, just gradually, day by day, disappointment by disappointment, until you are operating from a significantly smaller version of yourself than the one you actually are. You may have even told yourself this contraction was wisdom, that you were being realistic, that you were protecting yourself from the pain of hoping too large. But I need to name it plainly. It was not wisdom, it was erosion. And it was happening to your identity at the level where your deepest possibilities live. Today that erosion stops. Today the full original story of who you are and what you are capable of receiving is being reinstated. Not the diminished version that your suffering wrote. Not the cautious version that fear authored when hope started to seem like a liability. The original. The one written about you before your trials had any say in the matter. And that story says you are specifically, irreplaceably, and uniquely valued. Not in some abstract universal sense that applies equally to everyone and therefore feels like it applies to no one in particular, but precisely, particularly, in a way that takes into account everything about you, including the parts you consider liabilities, including the scars, including the places where you feel least impressive and least worthy of singular attention. All of it is known, all of it is considered, and the conclusion of that full and honest assessment is that you are chosen, wanted, purposefully made, and walking toward a future that was designed with your specific name on it. About those dreams you quietly folded up and tucked away somewhere you hoped they would stop hurting you. I see them there. I know what you did with them, and I understand why you did it. The extended waiting, the repeated disappointments, the gradual exhaustion of tending to something that showed no visible signs of growing. It made the most logical thing seem like releasing them entirely, or at least putting them somewhere. You would not have to look at them every day and feel the distance between where you were and where the dream lived. You did not abandon them with cruelty. You put them away with the quiet grief of someone who still cared, but could no longer afford the daily cost of hope deferred. And I am telling you now, gently but with complete conviction, it is time to bring them back out. Not with the frantic energy of someone trying to recover lost time. Not with the anxious urgency of someone who is afraid the window is closing. But with the calm confidence of someone who is beginning to understand that those desires were not random. They were not planted in you accidentally. They were not placed in your heart to be decorations, to make you want something you were never supposed to have. They were placed there as indicators, as breadcrumbs, as the kind of internal compass that points toward things that are genuinely meant for the person carrying them. The ground is ready now in a way it was not ready before. And more importantly, you are ready now in a way you were not before. Not because you have finally become perfect or finally earned the right through enough suffering, but because the person who carries those dreams today has depths and capacities and foundations that the person who first dreamed them did not yet have. The journey built you for the dream